Okay, we're going to go again. We won't go as long as the last time, but we'll go a little bit longer. These are outer planets and actually distort my normal time sense. But with Neptune to Mars, it's what you're doing. It's your desire for experience. It's what you're trying to do. It's the physical energy you're putting. It's not what you're wanting. It's what you're doing or trying to do that gets gullible. It gets fanaticized. It gets exaggerated and dramatic. So you could be like Don Quixote chasing it, riding into the windmill to save his love, and he thinks it's a monster, not a wind. Like the things we do for love and romance is quite incredible. So you're gullible in what you're doing. So you're trying to push things or hold on to things or make things happen. But Neptune, what you're trying to do more is weakening the muscles. It's weakening the desires. It's confusing them. It's creating unreliable actions that are going to have not such good consequences. At the same time, they seem like fanatically good ones. Complicated. I remember first hit, I get the conjunction first to Mars. I'm a teenager. I'm angry with kids trying to be evasive, but my parents separated. And I remember my mom got me to agree. He was being violent, so you have to, I'm going to get separated. So we were about 14, we agreed, or 15, and we agreed. So when it actually came down, he came home on Valentine's Day with flowers and some chocolates for mom. And she had the legal papers there. Say, here's the service papers. Get out, get your stuff, don't come in. You can't come in, get your stuff, get out. So he had to move out that same day. I blamed myself because I had agreed to it. And even though it was valid, it should have been separated a long time before looking back. I had these guilts for many years thinking, I agreed with this, how could this be? So it really confused my initiative, or who did what was done, that caused a lot of guilt and confusion. When it came to grade 11, that's when I went back to school, but I delivered 3 newspapers, about 200 newspapers every morning, and then I delivered beer in the afternoons for my grade 10 and 11 to get through high school. And that was when I went back, but I was on a vision of doing things. I got my parents off my case. You know, so even though I felt guilty, but I had to do something for myself. And in the end, on the last hit of this, I had a girlfriend for just a couple of years. And on a week before, or a week or two before the grad dance on graduation, I found my best friend in the arms of my girlfriend. So I ended the high school. I lost my best friend and my girlfriend. I'm in university on my own, but I was very alone and isolated. It was like all the people I did things with were suddenly gone from a confusion. So I had the guilt for my parents splitting. I had the confusion about the deception of my friend and my girlfriend, and the aloneness caused by each of them. And this was the things that eventually, within a year or two, I left university, I traveled, and I'm on my own. And I left Montreal and I just wandered. And I wasn't attached to anything from that. That Neptune dissolved that. But yeah, and you could say probably by the end of that, somewhere in there, shortly thereafter, I might have been experimenting a bit with marijuana or things. That was the early 60s. So anyways, that was that. Went down, lived in Greenwich Village and stuff. So that was getting out of a confused, corrupt home situation, but it was complicated. My mom kept a room with me. I could never go to live in her house. I could never be in one place or the other because I felt guilty for being in either one. So then when it squared, you know, like this is 40 years later, it squared. Mom was living at me, and I was getting to the point where I couldn't put up with her anymore. She was driving me crazy. So got her own place, but I would go down and do her cooking and washing and cleaning up. And she had a place for these last bit of time in her life. Then my son and grandson moved in. My mom started to deteriorate. She had to go into a home in the hospital, into a home. She lived about another month, and she died at the last hit of Neptune squaring the Mars. She died, and my son moved out, and I got my Mars, my energy back to being my own again, but not with some big fights with my son and other thing. Oh boy, it was complicated. So that's how but for Mars, when you're looking at this in theory, you're seeing it much bigger, and you're trusting what specific way is this applying to someone. Someone's not driving right, they're driving impaired. They're doing their life, they're going for experiences that are fanatical, unreliable. And sometimes if the fanatical is going towards a good cause, sometimes you give the sacrifice and you go with it. Go take off, go travel for a couple of years. What's it matter? Because you're not going to hold steady where you are. If you have a family and lots to lose, you hold steady. You don't go with the temptations to try and keep it simple. You hold the job. Someone could easily be unemployed for 2 years with Neptune hitting the Mars. or be scrambling around. At the same time, sexuality gets very unreliable and very evasive. A man's performance can be weakened or unreliable or tempted to be this way or that way. And I mean, Neptune to Venus or Neptune to Mars would be very easy for someone to have an affair and pick up an STD, a sexually transmitted disease, and have all the guilt and confusions attached to it. That's a dark side. But really, you're just trying to get simple actions. So a lot of times if somebody has Neptune to Mars and they don't know what they're doing, I get them to do some Tai Chi or some exercise routine where they're doing something simple. Or I get them to go help champion a cause or help someone, be a big brother to someone, or help in a hospice, or do something that's dedicated. It's just do some good things. So you're restoring, at least I'm helping here, or at least I'm doing that. But somewhere things are falling apart. You're not holding together. And just at that point, people are expecting you to be holding it together. Complicated. Solution, simplify, simplify, simplify. Don't do too much. If you get anger and rage and Neptune goes up, the anger and the rage and the alcoholism or things can magnify and go way out of control into this. People can live and die under these things. So usually it's not that extreme, but it's complicated. It's pathetic. If people are not going to be working or directing their energy properly, that's hard to put up with. If you're a parent, if you're a partner, if you're a boyfriend or girlfriend, how long can you put up with it if somebody's not driving impaired and they want you to get in the car? Duh. Sometimes you can see that sensibly, sometimes you can't. And life happens. One-sided relationships, pregnancies, like unsupported pregnancy, like when you're on your own, or it's complicated, can happen under these things, traveling. For a lot of people, for me, a lot of times I was traveling under some of these things, and not being anchored on, I don't have a job, I'm leaving here, I'm going here, I got escaping. But even when you're escaping, sooner or later in life, you have to come back and pay for the escape and try and fix it a little bit. Neptune's haunting. It's your conscience. It's your visions and your ideals and your sense of morality and conscience. If you feel guilty, it affects all your visions and dreams. I should never have done that. I could have done that. Oh my God. It starts imploding. If you hold on to that, and that's more important than people you meet, you're really imposing your hang up on other people. It's once you got it, it's how do you get rid of it? You have to atone, you have to work at things, you have to be dedicated to things, you have to do some dedicated things to undo the guilt, to forgive yourself, to not make things worse, not things more complicated, to be noble in a pathetic situation. So often bad company comes with Neptune to Mars or to Venus, unreliable people. That can go down to gangs, it can go down to hustlers, it can be whatever. It's hard to be sincere, right? And you just got to navigate this. And usually you hold on to Saturn and keep simple during that period. But it's going to come and take you away from your Saturn concerns, and it can confuse everything. And eventually you have to get back to where Saturn. This happened. Oh, Saturn's on my man heaven. Oh my goodness, it's going to happen around work. The Mars around the work, and then when it gets back, you got to get back to stable around work. Not so. If it so your Saturn is the structure going around. This is the whole next level. So I'm getting ahead of myself. But really, you got to go through these and take some time to wonder about it, see how it played out, think about it, and do this deeper thinking. What was dependent? What was confusing? What was lost? On a spiritual, what visions came in, what spiritual things came in, and what romantic things happened, and how much actually actualized, or how much did it get pathetic, or how disoriented were you, and when did you get your clarity back? Neptune comes in and causes this confusion and diminishes the clarity. Then as it lifts, you start to see more clearly again. I can't believe I was there. Oh, how did I get it? Like while you're there, it's desperate. I don't know how can I get out of this? So when it gets desperate, you do desperate things, which can makes the pathos more pathetic. So the whole process of that is simplifying, making it humble, making it self-reliant, minimizing dependencies, cutting back addictions or dependencies, and getting your life simpler. But when you don't want to, it's a very hard thing to do. Until you have some bigger losses and you start feeling guilty or sorrow, then you can begin to atone it and start making it better again. You can always make it better. Each day, you change a habit a little bit today, it makes your memories better tomorrow. You do that for 2 or 3 months, you can change your life. But it's where our attention gets pulled out and caught in. We think that's so desperate, we think it's so real, we forget about the whole pieces. So out of this, it's confusing everything so that you get to a greater spiritual sense or a more mystical sense or a more transcendent sense to your life. So there's a purpose in it, to dissolve the old and to open up to more profound things. But to do that, you have to be able to forgive yourself. You have to get your conscience more clear. Not if you're ripping off people and you got all these guilts or sorrows, boy, it's hard to forgive yourself and take that spiritual voice be heard. Okay, I got through this whole thing, and you never can do these enough. You can go on forever, but we'll come around and around. You take what you can and you work on it. You look at your own chart, you work through it. And once you've done yours and you see each of yours, and you've thought about it for a while, then you look at your parents, you look at the people immediately around you, see how they went through it. Then you begin to see some of the other people's weirder stories as they're usually doing other people's stories. But you only can have sensitivity to other people's once you've understood your own. Well, this is what I went through. Well, you did that? I'm often surprised by somebody dealt with something that I dealt with pathetically in one way. They took a different way with it now. And, oh, look at that. I never would have thought of that. So you're always learning as you're doing this. It's not like you know the time. You know the time of when this is happening. So you know this for sure. But what it is, there's choices. How it's solved, there's choices. And Neptune's always a puzzle and always a bit haunting. And it's always complicated. It's difficult to find a simple choice. And sometimes just a simple voice, a little help when someone really is pathetic makes a big difference. If you see someone lying on the street in a cold night, do you check to see if they're alive or not? Do you hand a bum a 50 cents or not? 50 cents or just walk by thinking, oh, that's another world. Well, these are all Neptune factors. Aversion, evasion, dependency, accept. So puzzles. How to get as simple and self-reliant. And if you don't want to, why would you? But then you have to go through difficult things before you think you get things complicated enough. Sooner or later, you're glad for simplicity. Okay, I'm going to leave it here. Next week, we got the Pluto reality check. It's a harsher one, but we do the same thing. Pluto to the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Sun, and to the angles. And you're only going to get 1 or 2 hits of each. And they'll go back and forth. We're dealing with harsher, more challenging, more. You'll see more, it's not more dramatic, but more intense things, dealing with fear and confrontation and power struggles. So we'll come in, yeah, that's it. So thank you. And next week's our last class. And maybe we can talk a little bit at the end of it. Okay, thanks.